Good afternoon. This video will give you an introduction to Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, as a strategy for planning effective lessons and overall instruction for all learners in your class. Universal Design, or UDL, provides teachers with a framework for designing instruction to address the unique needs of all individual learners in their class. Oftentimes, instruction is planned, and afterwards, the students who do not perform in the average area are thought about. So enrichment is added afterwards, or accommodations for students who need additional help are made. Universal Design for Learning asks that that is all taken into account beforehand, and that instruction is planned with all learners in mind. Universal Design is built out of architecture, and we can think about ramps in sidewalks. Now, in current day, all sidewalks, all corners have ramps. So somebody in a wheelchair can get up and down the sidewalk without having to ask for additional help or go to any extra effort. That's a universal design principle. Likewise, the size of doors are now larger than they used to be. And in all public elevators, the numbers are all in Braille so that somebody who reads Braille can tell what the numbers are without having to ask for additional help. These are all things that are put in place ahead of time so that a person can function within that framework without having to do anything after the fact. Universal Design for Learning aims to apply those same principles to the classroom and to instructional planning. So Universal Design for Learning is based on three primary components. And each component, you'll note, starts with the idea of multiple means of representation, multiple means of engagement, multiple means of action and expression. I want you to key in here on the term multiple means. This means that there's not just one way new information is represented. There's not just one way for students to engage. There's not just one way for students to express their learning. It means that we're giving options and different opportunities so that all learners can have access to the learning. So if we're going to go in and look at each of these in detail, the first being multiple means of representation. This applies to your actual instruction, to the input that you're giving to the students. We want to guide all learners so that they can categorize, gather the facts from what they read, hear, and see. Not just our average learners, but all learners. And we're going to do this by providing the information in different modalities. So you can see the list here. We're going to do it linguistic, non-linguistic, audio and visual. We're going to scaffold the new knowledge to connect to all learners' existing knowledge. So not just an assumption of what they know, but we need to know what the learners know so we can connect to that background knowledge of our students. So let's look at what this might look at to use multiple means of representation. I think it will surprise you. It's not rocket science. So using multiple means of representation, it would look like this. It's a lecture supported with lecture notes, might be followed up by a short video covering the same content. So in this example, you have the opportunity for a student to learn through a lecture. You have an opportunity for them to support that with lecture notes or to start with that, and the lecture supports the notes. And then it's followed up with a short video where the students can learn the same content. This gives them three opportunities to access that same new knowledge. Following this, the lecture, notes, and videos can be made available for students for viewing as needed. This can be done online through the internet quite easily these days. And then the materials are also available to students as they complete an activity for reinforcing the concepts. So whether it's an exam, a written thing, some sort of activity they can do, they have these materials to go back to help them reinforce that knowledge. Okay. The next one, multiple means of engagement. becomes a little trickier. All of us, no matter who we are, find different things engaging, and that's going to be the same in your classroom. We want to provide multiple means for all students to engage, so we need to find a way to grab their interest and keep their interest. So we want to plan for multiple different ways to get students interested. How we get it, how we keep their interest, their effort, their persistence, and also how we help them self-regulate their learning. So providing them with rubrics and different different feedback at different points during activities so that each student can self-regulate their own learning, and sometimes that self-regulation process is part of what we're teaching. So what does this look like in the classroom? An activity that might engage all learners could be a classroom project. The example I thought of was to develop a class a newspaper. So maybe you're you're in a literature class or an English class. The first thing would be that clear expectations are set for student learning. This helps with that self-regulation. Students need to know what it is they're supposed to be learning, because otherwise in a project it can get too big and the students can lose focus. But if we can tell the students what they're learning and help them monitor this learning, that's going to help them really stay focused on the project and then be engaged. Students are given choices as to what their role is. So in a class newspaper, students might choose to do the sports page. They might choose to do the cover story. They might choose to do comics, you name it, a gossip page, a Dear Abby kind of a thing. And the third thing is that multiple resources are made available, so students can access, maybe they call a newsroom, maybe we have a guest speaker come in. They can go online and look at online newspapers. We have newspapers, both class newspapers and regular newspapers available for students. So students are given the opportunity to remain engaged because they know what they're learning. They're given choices about how they're going to do this learning, and then they're given the resources to learn. So we're giving them the framework, and by giving them the choices, they can remain engaged. Okay, the last piece, multiple means of action and expression. So this one really becomes important because after we have given students new information in multiple ways of representation and we've engaged the students, we need to find out what they've learned. And many learners, everybody needs to show this in different ways. Oftentimes in school, you'll have teachers assessing a student's knowledge of, say, a novel through writing. And this is fine for students who are effective writers. But a student might have understood and gotten a lot out of that novel, but has a difficult time writing. At which point then the teacher doesn't really know if the student learned their objective of understanding the content in the novel. So we want to give them multiple ways to show what they've learned. So some options you can consider are making it a physical thing that they do. Multiple forms of media should be acceptable. And then we need to support their planning, their goal setting, and their strategy development to guide that executive function. So if a student does not have some of the underlying skills to, say, take an exam, we want to support them to get there. So we need to give them the cognitive scaffolding or support so that they can learn the content. So in a science class, we want to know if the student has learned the science content more than we want to know if they've learned to read. Because if we're assessing the science content, we don't want to be accidentally assessing the reading. So if we can give them strategies to help guide that executive function, we can lead them to the knowledge for the science content as well as supporting the other skills they need. So what does this look like in a classroom? Multiple means of action and expression. It might be something like this. At the end of a social studies unit, students are given a choice. They can write an essay, develop a poster, create a Poplet, which is a great online resource you can look at, or create a video presentation. If all students are given a rubric that clearly states what the expectation are and the learning that they're supposed to demonstrate, the same rubric can be used for all 4 of those options. During this final assessment, students should have access to their textbooks, any classroom resources, computers, or notes. This will allow students to go deeper in their learning and not limit them to students with strong memories, but actually see the students bring the knowledge together and try and synthesize what they have learned. It also resembles more their real life situation where they'll have resources at their fingertips as they're trying to work through problems. So in summary, I would like to say that when developing a UDL lesson, the most important thing is to know what it is you want the students to learn, to know what your learning objectives are. When you know what you want the students to learn, it's much easier to provide the multiple ways of representation, the multiple means of expression, and the multiple means of engagement. So if we start and we know we want our students to learn X, Y, and Z, and then we can go, okay, we're going to teach it and we're going to have 3 or 4 different ways that this new content gets out there. We're going to have 3 or 4 ways for the students to engage with this content. And then we're going to have 3 or 4 ways for them to express what they've learned. Then suddenly you've created a lesson or a unit that is accessible to all of your learners in your class, regardless of what strengths and skills they're bringing to the classroom.